Welcome to today's in-depth special report. We're diving into one of the most pressing issues facing the United States, the debt ceiling crisis. While many people understand that the U.S. has a large national debt, the question remains, why does the world's economic powerhouse, a nation that controls its own currency, even need to borrow money in the first place? History of debt ceiling showdowns. In 2011, the U.S. came very close to defaulting after the Tea Party Republicans demanded significant spending cuts in exchange for agreeing to raise the ceiling. The resulting deal led to a downgrade of the U.S. credit rating, a first in history. The stock market plunged, and the U.S. economy took a hit. 2013 government shutdown. In 2013, another standoff over the debt ceiling led to a government shutdown lasting 16 days. It cost the economy an estimated $24 billion, and federal employees were forced to stay home without pay. In 2017, the U.S. avoided default through a temporary extension of the debt ceiling. This was done by kicking the can down the road and agreeing to continue borrowing without a long-term resolution. Each of these battles highlighted the political and economic risks of not addressing the debt ceiling before it reaches a critical point. Now, let's talk about the political dynamics at play. Republicans and Democrats are locked in an intense battle over the debt ceiling, with no clear solution in sight. Here's what's going on. What is the debt ceiling? To start, let's define what the debt ceiling is. Simply put, the debt ceiling is the legal limit set by Congress on how much money the U.S. government can borrow to cover its financial obligations. Every year, the government spends more money than it collects through taxes. This gap is filled by borrowing, issuing treasury bonds that investors both domestic and foreign buy in exchange for a guaranteed return. This is how the government pays for services like Social Security, defense, infrastructure, and much more. The U.S. and debt. Why does a world power need to borrow? Now, let's delve into the central question. Why does the U.S. need to borrow money at all? After all, the U.S. controls the world's primary reserve currency, the U.S. dollar, and can print money whenever it needs it, right? It's a paradox. How can a world power like the U.S., with its own currency, be in debt? Here are the key reasons why the U.S. borrows, even though it controls its own currency. Stimulating economic growth. The U.S. government borrows to fund investments that can boost the economy. This includes building infrastructure, funding healthcare, and investing in education. Borrowing allows the government to spend now and pay later, which helps sustain economic growth, especially during times of recession. Interest rates are low. When interest rates are low, borrowing becomes cheaper. The U.S. can borrow money at a relatively low cost because of the global demand for U.S. Treasury bonds. This makes it more appealing to borrow rather than raise taxes or cut spending, which could harm economic growth. The dollar's reserve currency status. The U.S. is unique in that it can borrow in its own currency, the U.S. dollar, since the dollar is the world's primary reserve currency. Foreign governments and investors continue to buy U.S. debt because it's seen as one of the safest investments in the world. This allows the U.S. to borrow at lower interest rates and maintain a steady flow of capital. Funding economic stimulus during recessions. During economic downturns, the government often borrows money to stimulate the economy. For instance, during the COVID-19 pandemic, the U.S. government issued stimulus checks and expanded unemployment benefits to help families stay afloat. Without borrowing, the government would have had to cut spending during a time when more people needed help. Long-term investment for future growth. Borrowing can be used to fund projects that pay off in the future, such as infrastructure or research and development. These investments are expected to create jobs, increase productivity, and generate higher tax revenues in the future. The bipartisan divide over the debt ceiling reflects broader ideological differences about how to balance government spending, taxes, and the national debt. For everyday Americans, the debt ceiling crisis isn't just a Washington problem. It could directly affect their lives. Services that many Americans rely on could be severely disrupted, including veterans' benefits, public education, and federal loans. Social Security recipients could face delayed payments or reductions in benefits if the government can't borrow more money. Higher interest rates could lead to more expensive mortgages, car loans, and credit card debt. To sum it up, the U.S. debt ceiling is more than just a technical issue. It's a critical decision that affects not only the U.S. economy but the asterisk.